Fears of Fathom is a series of short horror games built around allegedly real stories submitted by people online. There are no horrifying monsters or otherworldly beings lurking in the woods, just humanity at its darkest. In this video, we'll be breaking down all 5 current Fears of Fathom installments to make them a little less scary. You'll get a sneak peek behind the scenes from a game developer's point of view as I show you things you're not typically supposed to see. We'll showcase things from different perspectives and break out of bounds. And of course, I love breaking games as a game developer myself, so I'm going to be messing with all the games as we go along. Making horror games not scary is kind of my thing, so I hope you enjoy this Fears of Fathom mega breakdown, as it took quite a long time to make. And real quick, the first episode of my horror game, Zardy's Cave, is out now alongside a plush toy of the character Pumpkin Jack, but there'll be more on that later. Fears of Fathom Episode 1, Home Alone is up first. As always, I usually hit you guys with a very brief recap so everyone knows the flow of the game. Our character wakes up and needs to do homework, but before doing so, they need to heat up some food. Unknown to the player, there's a man lurking in their driveway. We eventually heat up the food and start watching a really trippy TV show while eating. But that's when we see someone sneaking upstairs. We end up gaslighting ourselves and shrugging it off as we head upstairs to finish our work. We then lay down and then it becomes nighttime. We grab some water, Mom texts us a very disturbing photo, and suddenly we hear someone break a window and enter the home. So we quite literally Kevin McAllister ourselves and hide under the bed. We must remain there to stay alive, or must have chosen the right time to open the door for our neighbor. We can either get jump scared at the door or at the top of the stairs if we choose wrong. Eventually, police arrest the intruder. Recap aside, let's jump into the title screen. So the title screen is basically a daytime variant of the world map. There's a massive hidden light on the map that we can toggle to add the daylight back to the map. This lets us see a lot more than usual. Of course, we can disable the camera filters too. So if we head inside the house that the game takes place in, we'll find that the house inside is completely barren. There is no furniture or appliances, there is nothing. The walls are here and the floor is there, and I'm saying that because if we check out the houses nearby, like next to this, there is no interior at all. Now there is one outlier for this, which I'll get to in a little bit, but if we head back outside and face the house, we can see that we're able to turn the lights on in the TV room. This is normally disabled on the title screen, but we can turn it on with ease. So as we look around town, we can see the various license plates on cars, and all of them typically have this mirrored image. So it says USA, and that right half is then mirrored as the texture on the left half. But the town is here, it's fully fledged. We'll explore it in person as we start the game though, and we will also explore the house across the street in just a bit. So moving on into the actual game, there are essentially 3 versions of the same map. The title screen, the evening, and then nighttime. These are all separate. So normally, you are stuck inside your house and only have access to the backyard and the porch. There is an invisible wall encasing the surrounding area. But before just straight up modifying our game position to elsewhere, I can show you how to get out of bounds pretty easily. I noticed that doors in this game are very forceful, and they'll move you out of the way no matter what. So the developer did not account for players standing behind doors when they open. For example, doing this upstairs pushes us through the wall and into the closet area. We get stuck back here and can't do anything. However, with the fridge downstairs, we totally can. The fridge can force you into the corner of the room, or if you're positioned just right, it will straight up push you outside the house. It perfectly places you right between the 2 invisible barriers that block you from leaving the house. So now we are free to check out the entire city. No hacks needed at all. We are currently exploring the night map, and the first thing I want to do was check out the house across from us. This is where our neighbor lives who texts her mom, and the light goes on the upstairs window when she spots the intruder. The door out front won't open, but we can force ourselves into the house. Inside, we'll see that the house has nothing inside of it, but unlike the other houses on this map, its interior does have collision and walls. The layout is much different than our house, and a lot of the rooms don't make much sense at all. There's random holes in the walls, and we can even check out the garage. Heading upstairs, attempting to because stairs are broken in this game due to how our player controller handles physics. Anyways, upstairs we'll find plenty of rooms to check out. All of them are eerily barren. And if we go into the room where our neighbor turned on the light, we'll see that there is actually no light inside. It's merely a one-way visual effect applied to the window. We can go on the roof though, but we have trouble standing on it. The developer also placed invisible walls on the street too for some reason. Perhaps due to this and the neighbor's house interior, the player at one point could go to the other house. Also, the street is called Straight Street, which is odd. But if we warp past these walls, we can check out the block. The town landscape itself is pretty sparse. There's lots of houses with nothing in them, and we can even reach the edge of the map. On the evening version of the map, there are several cars that drive around. These cars have colliders on their models, so they can push us pretty far when they hit us. They do just drive straight to the edges of the map though, and pass through everything in their way. They eventually hit these white cubes that causes them to despawn. On this version of the map, we can find two sets of two cars, blocking streets on opposite sides of the map also. But let's start breaking some stuff. This game is honestly kind of a horror game masterpiece with its theme and pacing, which makes messing with stuff exciting. So right after starting the game, if we go into our parents' bedroom, we can see the intruder standing in our driveway before turning around and walking away. This dude is obviously casing the house and us inside of it. I wanted to see where he went though, so I warped outside and followed him. He can't jump scare us yet, but he does walk super far away as he sinks into the ground slowly. He then just unloads. But this isn't the only version of the intruder on this map, because looking into the files, we realize this intruder's name is actually Grandpa, or at least that's what the character is called on the map. However, this Grandpa wears a gray shirt, but there's another hidden version on the porch. If we re-enable this Grandpa, we'll see he's directly behind the door. He's a different person model too, and is much older than the actual real version. And although this Grandpa has the same creepy animations the other one uses in the normal game, he can't hurt us or trigger a jump scare. But also there's disabled sprinklers watering our yard. We can turn them back on even though they don't appear in the game to my knowledge. I could be wrong though. So when we sit down to eat our lasagna, after a few bites we can see someone walking up the stairs. Grandpa magically appears there, but we can see that he does walk up the stairs slowly before stepping through the ceiling and vanishing. This is truly terrifying, but only foreshadowing the absurd things I'll be talking about in just a moment. When Grandpa shows up at the door during the night and we are told not to open it, we can pop out our window and then fall off the roof behind the old goat and he won't notice us. He also won't jump scare us, because his jump scare trigger is actually opening the door while standing inside. We can walk through his body, but if we open the door while we are out here, Grandpa will vanish. We don't get jump scared. Well, at least not yet. The second we touch the rug in the hallway by the door, Grandpa will respawn behind the door and then reach out and grab us. So a neighbor can show up at the door too later on, and sometimes she just clips through the porch. But if we manage to open the door while she's there, we can see what she actually looks like. We can check out the police car up close too as it pulls up. Nothing really to see, but we can see that our neighbor is now standing on the porch properly. Let's rewind time for a bit though. After Grandpa breaks a window and gets inside later on in the story, he'll be standing inside of our parents' bedroom. His trigger to chase us is at the top of the stairs, but we can splinter cell our way on the roof like the mad hacker we are. It's weird though because I slipped off the roof and realized Grandpa was both upstairs and at the front door when the cops showed up. Trying it again, I got in the bed behind Grandpa, but his hearing was bad, so he didn't know I was there. Running into him triggered the most terrifying jump scare of all time though, a distorted close-up of his Argyle sweater. So the strange thing about when Grandpa chases you is that in normal gameplay it gets a bit glitchy. For one, the Elden Bro just straight up runs through the wall, which makes me wonder why he smashed a window if he has these godly powers. But two, can we talk about this jump scare? With the light turned on and the game brightened up, this guy is very clearly flopping around the screen. Let's turn on God mode and head back in. So when Grandpa phases through the wall, he's very aggressive. So much so that he pushes us up the walls and then walks up the walls to follow us. It's pretty crazy looking. I actually led the man outside and had him follow me to the police car so he could get arrested. And he vanished as soon as I did it. If we turn back time to that jump scare though, I think I know what's going on. So watch this madman freak out as he assaults us. So it looks like Grandpa's anchor point for his body rotation is set to his feet, and their pathfinding is able to rotate towards the player always, but they include up and down tilting too, when normally it's locked to just left and right turning. So when the jump scare triggers, it doesn't stop Grandpa from moving, and the player's collider doesn't either. So what happens is the Grandpa ends up zeroing in on the player's exact position. And then the model freaks out as it tries to rotate and face the player, which is impossible because the coordinates are the same. And so Grandpa has a seizure, and we're smashing his life alert button to get him some help. We could even turn Grandpa into a helicopter as he swaws his way out of the house and onto the roof. It's creepy and glorious. And nearby on the porch, we can find our neighbor clipping through the ground and staring at duplicate Grandpa's butt. Also glorious. I don't know what's more terrifying, the perfect execution of horror in this game, or the unintended glitches that ooze out of this unsettling plot. So we're just gonna delete the house from existence and leave ourselves with a bunch of floating furniture. Without the house, there are no triggers to advance the story for Grandpa to get us. Also, there's missing floor, so I fell to my death off the map. But with that, we've come to the end of Fears of Fathom 1. So now we're gonna go on a little car ride in Fears of Fathom 2, Norwood Hitchhike. Now before diving in, I figured I'd tell you how I know so much about breaking these games, as well as giving an update to what I've been up to. The Fears of Fathom series is made in Unity, which is a game engine I'm super familiar with, as I used it to develop my own chapter-based horror game called Zardy's Cave. Chapter 1 is currently out now, and it features a campaign mode and a challenge mode. In it, you'll explore an underground world, where monsters and demented scarecrows lurk around every corner. There's lots of interesting mechanics like climbing and growing plants to help you get through this claustrophobic world. It's a pretty fast-paced horror game, but I like the idea of momentum being something to focus on. Nothing against horror games where your character moves super slow, but we thought we'd try something different. It was fun working with my friends to make something that others could enjoy, so if you want to check it out, there's a link in the description below. If you like what I do here and wish to support the channel, grabbing the game and leaving a review would be a great way to do so. For a limited time, we are also offering a Pumpkin Jack plushie through Makeship. He's a character in the game voiced by YouTuber Scott the Waz, who I think did an excellent job bringing this silly lad to life. You can also find a link for that in the description too. But thanks for listening to me, and now let's get back to Fears of Fathom 2. In this second episode of Fears of Fathom, our character must survive this long trip home in the night. Our character Holly is on the road, making her way home from a gaming convention. Through text, she lets her friends and family know she's on her way home, following with the gas light coming on. That's probably not good. We'll then see a suspicious person crossing the street, entering the woods, right before we reach the gas station. After we pay for gas, the employee asks if we're heading down the Norwood Valley Road, advising that people have been going missing down there. During this, we can see an individual who approaches our vehicle and begins to mess with it. Trying to interact with the man leads us to being ignored, as he proceeds to walk back to this white van and then drive off. Oh yeah, we meet a customer as well, who doesn't have much to say, but we grab some dog food as requested by our mother, throw it in the trunk, and then continue on our trip home. We then find ourselves behind this car that ends up suspiciously speeding off after a while. And after a lot of driving, the player is then tasked with moving these logs that are obstructing the road, as our car breaks down in the process. The customer we saw in the gas station saves the day and gives us a lift to this lovely motel. But there's a lot that goes on at the motel, so for now, let's focus on the trip to the motel first. Recap aside, let's get this ride home started. So as we begin driving, one of the first encounters we have is this van, which will drive by us, traveling the opposite direction. Those of you familiar will know that this van is bad news, and it won't be the last time we see it. Attempting a game of chicken with the van results with quite the obvious conclusion: death. Now, when the vehicle's gas light comes on, you can see a dirt path that is gated off. Getting out of the vehicle here, I decide to take a closer look as I delete this gate from existence. Following this dirt path leads to a slightly more open area, where we can find one-dimensional trees. These are, of course, background assets. There's really nothing else following this, as I sped up the game and continue looking around. You can see some mountains in the distance, but I quickly realized that we don't want to get lost, so I just headed back to the car. Forgetting that I left the game running at a higher speed, you can see I was struggling to drive. I backed into the trees as I was trying to get back on the road and ended up flipping the car. To my surprise, I was still able to drive the car despite it being flipped upside down. I couldn't help but laugh as I glided down the road on the roof of my car. Whatever works, I guess. Getting back on track though, the player ends up seeing a suspicious individual crossing the street and going into the woods. Normally, getting out of the car here and trying to follow reveals an invisible wall that prevents us from going any further. However, if we watch the sequence from a different perspective, we can get a better look at this bad guy, as he is called in the files. I would speculate that this bad guy is possibly casing the gas station that we're about to head to. I mean, he could just be a nature-loving kind of guy, which is unlikely, but I digress. His trip into the woods doesn't last long, as he despawns shortly after entering them. It's at this point that the player will reach the gas station. A gas station that, I'll admit, is a bit suspect in itself. There are two individuals in here, including the employee, known as Cashier, with the other being referred to as Gas Station Trucker. We're gonna call him Walter White though, because yeah, he sort of looks like him. However, nothing to my knowledge really happens off camera at this part, so I decided to mess around in here before progressing. If the player decides to start grabbing a bunch of stuff off the shelves and dropping them all over, the cashier will get mad and ask what you're doing. If you keep doing it, he'll eventually threaten to call the police, but he'll never actually do it, thankfully. I felt threatened though, and wanted to make sure he wouldn't be able to use the store phone, so I shrank him. Big words for a small man, eh? Meanwhile, Walter White is just casually walking around like everything's fine, knowing fully well that we've seen he's been drinking this big boy milk. Our cashier friend is clearly in over his head at this point, but talking to Walter is pretty funny, as we break our neck while looking up at him. Unfortunately, while playing around with this milk carton, the game froze and I had to start over. In another instance, I deleted the gas station by accident, and as you can see, there was a lot going on. Getting back on track though, once the cashier is done with his storytelling, we can see a van parked outside the gas station. We can see it's the same van we passed from before, as it clips through a couple of objects out front. An individual will then appear near the van and start approaching our vehicle. This happens to be the same bad guy we saw walking across the street and into the woods from before, but as you can see, he'll approach our vehicle and begin to mess with it. Crouched down, he looks like he's tickling the inner portion of the tire. However, those of you that are familiar with the game know that this is just one step of many in this bad guy's evil plan. Once the player goes outside, the bad guy will retreat to the van and enter the van as it drives off. Following the van shows that it does drive for a bit before disappearing though. With that being all that really happens in this area, I slowly but surely make my way back on the road. Except, right after getting this shot, I lost sight of my car and then found it, well, in a tough spot. Our character at least keeps it real, as she says, "I wasn't the best at driving." Of course, I'm flipped upside down again, but I continue on driving and manage to reach this red car we normally end up behind. Taking a closer look at this car allows us to clearly see a hand sticking out of the trunk. And going in the trunk shows that it's in fact only a hand that's back here. Following the car with our camera as it speeds off shows that it does eventually disappear though. If we head up for an aerial view, we can see the tree line that follows with empty terrain. There's a lot of land out here, and going further out reveals some mountains, but that's about it. As for the following sequence of events, nothing really takes place behind the scenes. Once we've crossed the bridge, oh, let's fix this, it's messing with my head. Much better! So after the bridge, we end up following this dirt road for a bit. There is a notable deserted car and a rabbit we come across, but it's actually this random area that I was more curious about. It's right before the logs that are obstructing the road. If the player gets out here, they'll see a gate, and once they approach it, they'll see a big old bear. The furry guy just awkwardly walks by. I decide to delete the gate and attempt to pet our new friend, but of course, I simply walked through him. This makes sense, seeing as the player is not supposed to be out here, but we can watch him mosey along, eventually disappearing. Now we're at the part where we normally would get out of the car and pull these logs aside to clear the way. Then, our car breaks down. So, what if we just don't get out of the car and the logs happen to just call in sick for the day? Well, as you can see, we can in fact continue driving along this road. This makes sense that we're able to drive out here, seeing as we'd eventually be continuing on this road with Walter White anyway, as in the guy from the gas station. I continued driving on this road, but eventually began to notice fewer trees. Then I reached a point where there was only a dirt road to follow. The road ends, and I began to realize that we may be approaching the edge of the map. Knowing this, I lay on the gas and plummet off the map as we enter this endless, disorienting freefall. I end up getting out of the car during this fall, only to lose sight of it immediately. Guess I should have moved the logs. So I go back and we move the logs, our car breaks down, and now we wait. A random car will drive by and ignore us. Standing in front of it results with it just clipping through our character. However, the next lights we see are our ticket out of here. Walter White will approach the scene and will in fact hit the player if we're in the way. It's pretty fun to watch as we grind against the front of his truck. We greet each other as if that didn't just happen, and eventually he offers us a ride. So we grab our stuff and I made a tiny change to his truck, but couldn't even get my belongings in the bed of it. So I revert him and his truck back to normal size and continue on. I forgot to mention this earlier, but when we try to dislodge the camera in this mode, we'll see that the truck follows it. This is because the truck is essentially parented to the camera, and they do this so the visual effects applied to the screen normally can be doubled up outside the windows, which makes it a lot harder to see. Thus the inside isn't as distorted, and we can fly off the car. As you can see though, it's really trippy looking. As we fly above the truck, we're technically in. After some small talk though, the game fades to black, loading us into the next area, the Marvelous Motel. At this point, we're dropped off at the motel by Walter White. We then get a key for our room at the front desk and are told that Tommy will be taking care of our car. Once getting to our room, we'll be jump scared by the guy that's going to be handling our car, as he's suspiciously standing in the bathroom. After this awkward interaction, he'll leave as he makes his way to get our character's car. Once we're settled in with our stuff, we then lay down in the bed. It's not long after that we'll see a person staring at us from the front window. Going outside, we'll see the individual across the parking lot, where they retreat to another room. This is when our character wants some coffee, thinking it would help the situation. It just so happens that there's a coffee machine right next to room 4, where our friend that was looking through the window went. After consuming the coffee, we go into a spiraling dizzy state as our character trips out. Successfully getting back to our room and laying back down, our character will drift to sleep, only to wake up to someone walking away from the bedside and into the closet. Not doing anything will result in a knock on the door, with it being the motel employee from the front desk. He says we have noise complaints from neighboring rooms. So after mentioning the incident with the coffee machine, he becomes annoyed, as he claims there is no coffee machine. Of course, when we go to show him the machine, it's mysteriously gone. Strangely enough, he tells us to just go back to our room and take the medication that's in there. Once the player does this, a few moments later, a flash comes through the window, followed by a suspicious person coming to our door. Let's stop there though, and go back to when we first got to this motel, and see what transpires behind the scenes throughout the sequence of events we just went over. As we load in, we can see Walter drive away into the cold, dark night. I wanted to watch where he goes, and must have messed with the speed of him while pausing the game, because when I unpaused it, he just takes off like a rocket into this endless void. Slowing it down to a near crawl shows that he still moves fairly fast, but as you can see, he'll just keep driving in one direction. He'll travel through some trees and then off the road, where he eventually reaches the edge and flies away. He just keeps going as the map gets smaller and smaller. If we take a closer look at him, we can see his head hanging down, like he's knocked out or perhaps asleep. But I believe it's because his model is still fixed on looking at our character. We never see him again though. Bon voyage, good friend! Coming back to the motel, if we go under the map and look above, we'll see that most of the rooms are empty. We can break the doors down and get a closer look at these very vacant rooms though, which are glorious. The front desk motel employee doesn't hide much, but I wanted to get behind the counter with him. So I removed the side door, not realizing it would destroy the entirety of it. He didn't seem impressed with what I've done, so I reminded him of who's the boss and shrank him into a baby man. Heading to room 9, we can peek into the bathroom where Tommy is waiting. Getting a closer look, I would have figured he was going to be the one trying to take my life. I mean, look at that face! When Tommy sets off to go get our car, it's fantastic to watch him walk. The movement overall was giving me Nintendo 64 GoldenEye vibes, that's for sure. He'll disappear as his tow truck rolls out in Autobot fashion though. Unlike the truck that dropped us off from before, this one will follow the road, eventually disappearing at the bend of the road. Something else to note, if you stand in front of the tow truck as it leaves, it will continuously push us, allowing the player to break through the bounds of the level with no mods. However, it's now time to sleep and wake up to this creeper in the window. Lo and behold, it ends up being the bad guy that we've been seeing throughout the entirety of this game. We normally see him cross the parking lot and go into a room, but what we don't see is that when he goes into this room, we can find him just walking in circles. He'll continuously just do this. Even breaking the door down and going inside doesn't faze him, as he continues this rigorous cardio workout. Before drinking the coffee though, the player should recognize this red car here, as it's the one we saw earlier with the hand poking out the trunk. If you listen carefully, you can hear someone breathing inside the car. Take a listen. Looking in the car, of course, reveals nothing, but I believe I know who we're hearing, and I'll explain my theory in a few moments. First, we'll drink the coffee, which leads us to a disorienting walk back to the room. Going to sleep once again follows with us waking up to this strange man who walks into our closet. However, as you can see, I froze the game, so we can get a better look at him. I believe this is who we heard breathing in the red car, and that he is working with the bad guy. Going outside, we can see the trunk of the car is open too, suggesting he could have been hiding in there the whole time. Definitely food for thought, but I'm getting ahead of myself. This guy is called Creeper Sneaky in the files, which is hilarious. Looking in this closet that he hides in shows that he just disappears. Investigating the closet normally follows with a character being abducted, so we're not going to do that. We can find the motel employee just standing outside the front office all awkwardly, but answering the broken phone that rings and goes dead will eventually prompt the motel employee to start walking to our room. Something the player might have missed though is when we go to show the employee the coffee machine that he's unaware of. If the player looks back at their room, we can see Creeper Sneaky come out of our room and just walk away like a smooth criminal. He'll just appear in the room once we reach a certain distance. Following him, I deleted this fence where I saw him heading and ended up finding him out here walking around in circles, just like the bad guy. Who taught these guys how to act casual? The motel employee even followed me and couldn't care less about this creepo walking around out here. Something players also may not have noticed is when we discover the coffee machine is gone, we can come over here and find the white van that we saw the bad guy get in from before. This could explain why the coffee machine is gone, as they stashed it in the van. The van is also not here prior to drinking the coffee. I'm speculating and could be wrong, but let me know what you think in the comments. We go back to our room though, take some medicine, and then the final act takes place. We'll see a flash come from the window, and then Mr. Creepy Sneaky spawns in as he creepily approaches our door. He wants us to let him in, and oddly assures he's not the police. If you continually refuse him entry, he'll begin to bang on the door. We can see he's not really banging the door, as he just stands there, but when the door breaks down, he'll pursue the player and proceed to abduct them. His walk is fabulously dangerous, and there is no escaping the room. In another instance, I deleted my way out of the motel room and managed to get right next to him. Unfazed by me, I continued the same dialogue with him as he began to break the door down. As soon as he breaks the door down, he does a 180 and pursues directly towards me. I wish I was recording audio of myself, as I couldn't stop laughing during this hilarious rundown. We're normally supposed to hide in the closet when he breaks down the door, which follows with him searching the room, eventually going into the bathroom. That's when the employee comes into the room and surprises Creeper Sneaky with a creepy sneaky punch of his own, as the screen fades to black. Our character will talk about how the entire night was weird and that she'll never go on a long road trip again. And then the credits roll. I wanted to explain that sequence first because now if we go back and instead just open the door for Creeper Sneaky as he requests, we can literally see him hiding on the side of the motel, waiting for us to come out. Not as sneaky as one would think. However, I decided to break my way through the motel rooms and exit out of one of them instead. I thought he might pursue me like from before, but he'll just continue to stand there and wait for us, despite the fact that he's staring directly at us. I went to go get the employee, but realized he wasn't loaded in. So I tried loading him in myself, but didn't realize I accidentally loaded in the version of him that comes in the Punch the Dude. I didn't know what to do at this point, so I just let it play out. And as you can see, it's a strange situation altogether, as he punches nothing. The dialogue from a character starts popping up on screen, but never fades to black. After clicking through it all, it took me directly to the credits. I guess that's one way to beat it. Yeah, the credits area is just this long stretch of road as the tow truck drives on. I found some signs and fences throughout this area with no other significant findings. But with that, we've come to the end of Fears of Fathom 2. Next up, we have Fears of Fathom Episode 3, Carson House. In this third episode of Fears of Fathom, our character must survive a night of house sitting that takes a turn for the worst. But behind this terrifying situation are a lot of things that are hidden out of sight. At the beginning of the game, we're informed that our character, Noah, is telling this story 10 years after it happened. In a nutshell, he explains how his father, who is a realtor, has a client that needs his house to be watched over while he's out of town. Being easy money, Noah accepts this job, following with the first sequence. We start off in a laundromat, which threw me off at first. However, once the player finds a way down these stairs, it's fair to speculate that this instance may not be exactly real, as we enter this giant room. There's what seems to be an endless row of washers in here, but progressing through here leads us to this man, who appears to be doing some laundry. This man is in dire need of bleach apparently, as he continuously asks where it's at. Eventually, we'll come to the realization that we're dreaming, as the man tells us that nap time is over and that we've arrived. This follows with our character waking up as we arrive at the client's house. Before moving forward though, let's take a closer look at this dream state that Noah, our character, goes through. Normally we're confined to this laundromat, and the only way to progress is down these stairs into this big, trippy room, which we'll get to in a moment. Outside the laundromat, we can see that there's various stores along this strip of road. Breaking out this building shows that we can walk around this area. We can also see that the rain animation is only occurring right in front of the building we're in. But outside of that, nothing interesting is taking place out here. Moving back inside, we can actually see how big this trippy washroom is. Deleting one of the machines allows us to come out into this big open area. There's a cart out here, but beside that, it's simply just a giant space that we're able to traverse. Making our way to Dream Guy, as he's referred to in the files, we can see that he'll repeatedly wave with his deformed hand. As you can see though, I have a slight different interaction with him this time. However, this big boy still needs to know where the bleach is, and I sadly still don't have the answer. I will say, funnily enough, it was a bit more intimidating this time around while interacting with this extra large dude. This brings us back to where we were though, as we wake up in the backseat of Dad's car. So Noah's dad will tell Noah where the spare house key is and remind him to keep the doors locked. Upon leaving the car, we're supposed to make our way to the backyard so we can retrieve the house key from under a fake rock, but not before giving some much needed pets to this doggo. Anyway, we get the key and make our way into the house. We'll get a grace period where we're able to explore the house, which is fairly big, as you can see. Eventually, we'll get a text from Roy Carson thanking us for taking the house sitting job. We're also in another chat with Evelyn Cooper, who appears to be a possible love interest at this point. Mr. Carson will task us with feeding his dog Zeke, with the dog food being in the basement. Great, the basement. However, there's a flashlight we're able to get from the storage room, which ends up helping us search for the dog food down the cellar. Once finding and grabbing a can of dog food, we make our way to the kitchen, open the can, head outside, and fill Zeke's bowl. The dog will slowly but surely come to eat. At this point, Mr. Carson will message Noah asking for another favor, which involves fixing his computer. So I go back inside, grab the can opener for protection, and head on up to the computer room. This room is where we'll find our character throughout this episode for various sequences. This time around, it's to fix the computer. However, if you open the recycling bin first, there's a video in there called Guide to Being a Better Person. With that aside, you're supposed to go on the internet and download an antivirus program which ultimately fixes the computer. This in turn gives us access to the security cameras, which are a crucial tool throughout the game. At this point, Evelyn wants us to watch a show, so we'll make our way downstairs and begin to watch Cooking with Jeffrey. The show is entertaining, creepy, and funny overall. You're probably wondering though, what has taken place behind the scenes since we've exited our dad's car? Well, initially it didn't seem like much, but if we follow Noah's dad after he drops us off, we can see he'll make a right turn and then be destroyed. The block that the car runs into is labeled Destroyer, therefore destroying the car when it makes contact. This occurs with all the cars that end up driving out during gameplay, but I digress. I was really hoping to find the antagonists of this episode hiding out of sight somewhere. Zeke's outside, being Zeke, but that's about it. However, I did stumble across something in the files that's very neat. Way up in the sky, we can find another house that is currently hidden from the player. This house has both a daytime and nighttime variant, although toggling these on creates a ton of lights and tends to bog the game down. By far, what I was most interested in was seeing if this house could be explored. So I quickly teleported my character up here, and I was excited to see that the house had its collider intact. This allows me to explore it completely, but I did have to delete the doors so I could make my way through, as they did not function. The house is pretty expansive with an upstairs, ground level floor, and a basement. More than likely, this was another prefabricated house included in the asset pack that was used to make the game, as it seems to be of a similar build to the Carson House and the Episode 1 house in Home Alone. A few of you have commented before that these house setups and neighborhood have been seen in other games as well. But speaking of Home Alone, I decided to have some fun with this floating house. So I went and grabbed the bicycle from Mr. Carson's and brought it up to the floating house. Like Kevin McAllister riding a sled down the stairs, in Home Alone fashion, I rode the bike down the stairs and off the porch. Let's just say Noah's neck should be broken at this point. But like a champ, he simply says, "I fell off my bike." Glorious. Not wanting the fun to end, I turned my bike into a big wheel basically, and proceeded to ride it down the street, yelling "Paperboy" as I proceeded. Anyways, let's progress the plot, shall we? It's at this point that Mr. Carson will ask us to do some grocery shopping for him as he sends over a grocery list. However, if you stick around and continue to watch the TV, this really strange but funny commercial about buying hands comes on. Apparently, hands are a hot commodity in this world. Moving on though, we head outside, grab the bicycle on the side of the garage, and ride to the store, which leads us into the next sequence. This will lead us into a different area entirely, as we're tasked with going to Nuck's convenience store. It's a somewhat similar situation like the gas station we go into in the Norwood Hitchhike episode, except this time we have more things to gather overall. We also can help this random old lady that thinks we work here. She'll end up telling us she needs to find the mustard, which we can find and give to her. This is where we run into our friends Turner and Andy as well. They tell us that our girl, Kara, was just here. Through this conversation, we learn that Noah isn't dating her anymore, and that he's talking to someone else, which will be Evelyn, the person we've been texting throughout the game. Outside of that, though, we simply gather the items from Mr. Carson's list, check out with the store clerk, and head back to Mr. Carson's house. If we go back to when we first loaded into this sequence and pause it, we can actually get a closer look at Noah's ex, Kara. She can be seen creepily standing in front of the store. Kara definitely does not look like a trustworthy individual, if you were to ask me. Once we get closer to the store, though, she'll proceed to walk to the side of the building, get in her car, and drive right by us. I had some fun in the store as I messed around with the other characters in here, as nothing really occurs off camera. The entirety of this section does have quite a few buildings out of bounds, but nothing out here can be explored. I broke through the barrier that normally confines the player, and learned that I wasn't able to get too far before falling through the map. With that though, let's get back to Mr. Carson's house. Once getting back, eventually our friend from the store will text us, telling us to go look up Mr. Carson's divorce on the internet. Doing this will follow with the doorbell ringing. Apparently, it's a pizza guy. Of course, we didn't order a pizza, so naturally this causes us to be hesitant with opening the door. However, opening the door ends up not being as bad as I thought it'd be. We get our pizza, but the guy wants to come in and wait out the rain. Our responses are all variations of denying him access, which results with him understanding and then leaving. Going under the house, we can find the pizza box that he gives us, and I believe this is stored here until we accept the pizza, which ends up in our hands during a scene transition. Before answering the door though, if we try to go out and around to the front of the house, we're blocked by a barrier. As Noah says, couldn't go out in the downpour. Breaking through the barrier, we're able to get a better look at this pizza guy, who I honestly thought was going to be the antagonist during my first playthrough. Instead, he peacefully leaves in his flame decaled ride. We can now sit down and eat some pizza as we watch another strange TV show yet again. The doorbell will ring again eventually, but we can find some flowers that were left behind. Checking this out as it occurs shows that they simply just appear. After collecting the flowers, we eventually get text messages from an unknown sender. Noah figures it was a wrong number as we continue on and do some homework. I thought it was pretty funny that we get a loading bar as we do our homework, but once this completes, the screen fades to black, loading us into the next scene. So now we can see that the power has gone out, and we can hear the dog barking outside. Normally, if we were to follow the sound of Zeke barking, it'll lead us to the side of the house where we can turn the power back on. However, if we decide to not go to the power box first and take a look at the side of the house, we can see our ex Kara creepily standing there. As long as we don't go too far over, she can't see us and will not attack. Fun fact though, if you get on the bicycle and go into her view, she simply ignores you. Being on the bike basically makes us invisible to her, and the result is pretty funny to see. She'll just stand still as if she can't see us. This is because our player character unloads when we activate the bike, and a separate controller loads in. She is designed to only chase our primary controller, tagged as the player. I decided to have some fun though, and removed the garage door. I then got her to chase me and ran to the garage for safety. As you can see, we're stuck in here and she is unable to come in. Her chaotic chase towards us will just continue to take place until I exit the garage, making for a funny interaction. Going to the power box first during this scene will result with Kara disappearing though. So, moving on, I head to the power box and turn it back on. Apparently, I may have given Zeke too much food earlier, as this big boned doggo trots away. Heading back inside, we'll see that this particular door is suspiciously cracked open. If you open the door and don't go in the room, you can actually see Kara behind the door, patiently waiting for us to come inside. Why would Noah break it off with this clearly romantic girl? Sheesh, all she wants to do is take our life, no big deal. So let's not go in there and continue on. It's at this point that we need to head back up and resume our homework. That's when we hear something downstairs, which we'll need to check out. Going down to investigate without checking the cameras first is not the way to go here. We can see that the oven is turned on, and once we turn it off, well, she's waiting in the corner of the kitchen and will proceed to destroy us with her love. But if we check the cameras first, we get a quick glimpse of her walking on the back porch. Watching all this transpire from a different view as we do our homework shows that she'll disappear from this room as the door on the other side opens. We'll then see her spawn in the kitchen as we continue with our homework, but checking the camera results with her walking across the porch, eventually disappearing. Before completing this part though, I decided to mess with Kara and turned her into a slender woman. As you can see, she's now clipping through the ceiling, but if we go upstairs, we can see that she's doing just fine, as her head creepily pokes through the floor like something out of Skibbity Toilet. She ends up chasing me, and it's pretty funny to see. I eventually made it outside during this horrific chase, as she towers over me and jump scares us with her legs. Glorious! At this point, normally we go back upstairs as we text our friend. Noah thinks his friends have been messing with him this whole time, which they deny. Checking the cameras again, we'll see Kara walking up the stairs. She goes into one room, but eventually comes out and will proceed down the hallway, ending up at this unusable door. She then begins talking to Noah, expressing how she misses him. The conversation will continue, and we can see that she's not quite right in the head, as she threatens to kill Noah and Evelyn. If we stay in the room, she'll end up coming in and destroying us. What we should have done is leave this room and go into the laundry room across the way, as this conversation takes place. Now we'll be safe once she goes into the computer room, and once she's out of sight, we can make a run for it. When we get down the stairs, the screen will fade to black. It's explained to us that they got the police involved, and eventually she was apprehended. The credits will then roll, as we've successfully completed the episode. Going back and seeing all this transpire from another view reveals that she'll load in downstairs right as we check the text messages. However, this time around I came prepared. Before checking my texts, I decided to go get the bicycle and ride it all the way up and into the computer room. I will say it was sort of difficult to ride this bike in the house, but not impossible. If you remember, the bike essentially hides us from her view if we're riding it. And as you can see, she walks right into the room with no idea where we are. She'll eventually walk up to the computer desk and will remain here indefinitely. I found this to be a hilarious way to beat the game, as I have a pretty difficult time getting the bike back downstairs. I don't know how I exactly did it, but I ended up getting stuck in the house and eventually found myself scaling the ceiling. Once I got myself out of the mess though, I realized that the bike allowed me to skip the trigger that would normally cause the game to end. This resulted with the game never ending. I was able to go back upstairs and find that Kara was no longer hostile towards me, as she just stands there thinking about her life choices. There's not much to see in the credits area, as the only difference here is this patrol car in front of the house. But with that, that's everything I was able to find and break in Fears of Fathom 3. Next up, we have Fears of Fathom Episode 4, Ironbark Lookout. In the 4th episode of Fears of Fathom, our character is a park ranger who just transferred to a new post. And yes, as you may have guessed, things horrifyingly escalate for this dude. Starting off, we'll read that this is a story about Jack Nelson, a park ranger for a state park. He explains how he ended up getting transferred to another outpost, which results with quite the commute. Living out of an RV makes this a minor inconvenience though, so he says his goodbyes as he heads off to his newly assigned location. The game then starts as we're driving the RV. Opening the phone will show two individual conversations that we're having between Mitch Scott and Kayla Nelson. After some more driving, Kayla will message us informing Jack that there's a diner that we should be passing by as we enter Roseburg. Sure enough, shortly after we begin driving through Roseburg, we can see the diner off to the right, which is where we'll be heading. After parking, we can see there's a man leaning on a car as he very loudly chews on this burger. Talking to him reveals that some kids have gone missing from the park in which our character is working at. There are rumors that a creature is responsible, and so on and so forth. Heading inside, we're greeted by a waitress who tells us to take a seat wherever we please. There are some questionable characters in here, with this guy telling us to leave him alone and this guy straight up ignoring us. There's also a delivery man of some sort and a businessman at the bar. Taking a seat will bring the waitress to us, and at this point, we basically just order a meal. While waiting for our food, our character needs to use the restroom. So we head to the restroom, do our business, wash our hands, and head back to our booth. It is now time to eat. Glorious! Once we're finished eating, our server will cash us out. As we make our way to the RV, we'll notice the doors open, which is definitely suspect, along with the bathroom door within the RV being strangely jammed. So we just blatantly ignore that detail, hop in the driver's seat, and continue this commute. Nothing wrong going on here, right? The screen will fade to black, loading us into the next scene. We'll stop the recap here for now, so let's go back and take a closer look at this entire sequence we just played through. If we go for an aerial view, we'll see a good amount of trees, some mountain-like terrain, and a body of water that's running alongside the road that we drive down. We can see we're playing on a fairly large map, and the road we're driving on eventually ends. What I found interesting though, is this semi-truck that drives past us during our drive to the diner. I was thinking we'd die if we went for a head-on collision with it, but that's not the case here. This truck wants to get past us so badly that it tries to leap over me. So this led to attempting to see if we could flip the semi and stop it in its tracks. However, trying this ended up with our RV getting stuck in the guardrail. It's out that this guy hasn't got out of his truck yet to exchange insurance though. The nerve! But then this happened. The truck began shaking all over as it began to lose control, eventually flying off the road and into the water. Just when I thought it was over, the truck glitches back up top and proceeds to do a headstand on the RV, immediately resetting itself. It then proceeds to drive through the RV, making its totally normal escape. All by my lonesome now, I decided to try to flip the RV. I wanted to see if I could drive this upside down, like I had in a previous episode with a car. It's safe to say though, that this bad boy is, not going anywhere while upside down. How are we going to explain this one to AAA? I did learn that this RV doubles as a submarine. I managed to get it down into the water and even was able to drive down here, making for a great adventure. It was pretty cool looking overall, but there's no way of driving out of here though. So after dramatically teleporting high into the sky and plummeting back to dry land, we head into Roseburg. It comes to no surprise that all the structures within this area don't reveal much, as nothing is inside any of them, making the diner our main focus. Cheeseburger Guy's chewing is too much for me, so I don't give him much attention and immediately head inside. Something I didn't notice during my initial playthrough was the guy that doesn't speak to us. He has with him a shovel, a bag, and some strange attire, making him that much more suspicious. We'll get back to him. However, during this sequence when the server goes to get our meal we ordered, I decide to follow her to make sure she handles my food properly. We can see she walks back into this fairly empty kitchen and into this wall as the meal on her tray visibly changes. She will just walk in place here until the player advances. Going to the restroom and sitting back down will then start her journey for bringing our food out. Changing our focus back to the suspicious guy, we can see that when he goes to the restroom as we're checking out, he'll enter the room and sit in the middle of it as he continues his dining animation. I found this to be hilarious, I don't know why. He doesn't even mind if we join him in the restroom. Nothing going on here, just friendships being made. The only other thing that happens here is when we go to our RV. We can see the door is opened, and later we'll find the bathroom door is strangely jammed. To me, this implies that the odd restroom man from the diner is in here, because after paying the bill, he's nowhere to be found normally. Sadly, looking in the RV restroom reveals that it's empty. Things are clearly escalating here though, so I make my way out to the RV, start her up, and make my way to the next section of the game. It's 8:02 p.m. at this point as we arrive at the front gate of our destination. After getting the RV parked, we can make our way out and towards what appears to be a front office building. It's here where we'll get jump scared by the shotgun-wielding ranger, which caught me off guard during my first playthrough. As we're getting acquainted with this ranger known as Billy, we can see someone walking outside through the window. This is definitely a bit sus. However, Billy is clueless as he proceeds to confirm we are who we say we are. Billy ends up clearing us and assigns our character to Fire Tower 11. He'll then go outside, open the gate, give us a flashlight, and then advise that we should not travel any further north than a half mile of our tower. He says that it's dangerous, stating that there's bobcats and bears, nasty business. We then need to grab our bag before we head into the park. Once doing so, we load into the next sequence. Going back and looking at the entirety of this area, we can see that it's a long stretch of road that makes a C-like shape. There's really nothing in the outer bounds besides all these trees of course, so our main focus is going to be the front gate area to the park. Taking a sneak peek in the front office building before we open it, we can see Billy anxiously standing guard at the door as he waits for us. Let's be real though, Billy has zero chill when we open this door. I mean, who answers the door like this? I guess in his defense, my character is invisible, so there's that. However, I'm more interested in the fellow that's going on a nightly stroll into the park. I realize that this guy looks familiar, and that's because it's our toilet friend from the diner. He just walks on by and eventually disappears. I did manage to load him back in, which made the strange guy just stand where he had vanished. I think it's fair to say that my coworker is no longer concerned for his safety, as this creeper is now staring at us through the window. Things take an even stranger direction as I decide to invite this man into the office. It was awkward at first, but eventually we all got to know one another and had a few laughs as we hung out for a bit. Judging by his face, I'm sure he's questioning why he even came to this park in the first place. With that though, let's continue to the next section. So this area is where we'll be spending the majority of our time. We'll be able to make our way to Tower 11 if we just follow the signs. After we get settled in, we end up conversing with Connor over the radio, who is another ranger that's stationed at Tower 12. We'll be having a lot of back and forth with him over the radio. But we now need to head down and obtain some firewood. Bringing it back up, we aggressively start a fire so we can stay cozy with potential third-degree burns. So part of our job is to fill out this service reporting form, recording the current temperature, wind speed, weather condition, and number of hikers assisted. Once finishing the report, you can find some strange videos that are on this computer, but my favorite of them all has to be this video titled Cats. Definitely check it out if you haven't already. Moving on though, once we close up the windows and go to sleep, we'll wake up in the middle of the night because our character needs to use the restroom. After we make it rain, we'll see someone down below with a flashlight as they point it at us right before turning it off. Grabbing the binoculars quickly and feeling that "do you copy PTSD?", we look down to see a figure slowly walking away as they disappear behind the trees. Our character decides to just go back to sleep though, which, okay, don't want to lose any sleep over it, I suppose. This brings us into day 2, where we'll find ourselves sipping on some coffee as we take pictures of the scenery. Eventually, Connor will radio us about some visible smoke north of our position. This then follows with the player needing to go and investigate the smoke out north. Remember though, Billy from the previous section told us to not go too far north in the park. So, whoops. Following this trail will lead us to the next section of the game as the screen fades to black. Let's once again go back through the entirety of this area and take a closer look at it all now. Entering the park, we can see our character holding his bag and flashlight. But if we go for an aerial view, we can see the entire layout of this section. Tower 12 looks as if it hasn't been fully constructed, which makes sense, seeing as we normally never be this close to even notice. I got sidetracked and couldn't help myself, which followed with the deletion of some barriers so I could Sonic the Hedgehog my way along the water. It was entertaining to run fast like this, and it ended up leading me to this cool little waterfall that feeds into this river. There really isn't much else going on here though, so our main focus is going to be the immediate area of Tower 11. The person with a flashlight is the only occurrence that really takes place during this whole sequence. Breaking through some barriers, we can make our way down to this individual and see that it's, well, our friend from once before. So to recap, it's to my understanding that this guy stuck into our RV while at the diner and then proceeded to catch a ride with us to the park. This would explain why he can be seen creeping behind the front gate building from before. At any rate, I realized he wasn't moving because I haven't looked at him with the binoculars yet. So I ran back up real quick and used the binoculars. Coming back down, we can see that he doesn't venture too far from where he was, and he never despawns either. Naturally, I began messing with the stranger, which led me to finding another variant of him. This model, labeled as Bad Guy, is from another scene that doesn't take place until later. As you can see though, I had some fun with him as I made him nearly the size of the tower. I didn't forget his twin, so I dragged him over to join the fun as well. In the end, I find myself in what would normally be a terrifying situation. On that day, humanity received a grim reminder. I couldn't help but laugh though, as I continue with the rest of the scene. After removing water from our body off the side of the tower, we'll see that one of the twins begins to walk to where he initially needs to be. We can then sort of see how it breaks, with the flashlight spawning in as he continues to try and get into position. This time around, it was nice to have some company as I sipped on my coffee, even if he didn't seem too happy to be here. Taking a closer look at the smoke that appears shows that it's just rising from this empty canvas, which of course is no surprise. Other than trying to mace this giant weirdo, not much else takes place in this scene. So we'll go ahead and proceed to the next section, where we'll investigate the smoke to the north. Loading in, we'll follow the trail that leads to the source of the smoke, which ends up being this little campsite. Right before we get to the campsite, we'll hear a male-like scream. A bunch of delayed text will then come through due to our phone's bad reception, but no one appears to be at this campsite once we enter it. However, if we approach this closure barrier, we'll see a shadow-like figure creeping through the tall grass. Our character will try to communicate with this lurking individual, but no one responds. The only thing our character has to say about this situation is the area beyond that site was closed. It's at this point that we grab a bucket, fill it with water, and proceed to put this fire out. We'll hear some noises as if someone's close to us, but ultimately nothing happens as we leave and load back into the previous area. Coming back to this area to break it, you can see this map is probably the smallest of them all, with a rectangular shaped canvas. Half of the map that's unused is rugged and slopes downward. I came out here and did a 5K, but there's nothing out here. The camp itself doesn't hide anything from the player, but we can get a better look at this fellow in the woods. They will creepily stand by and wait for the player to spot them. This attire that the person has on looks terribly familiar though. If you haven't guessed already, I believe this is the outfit we see next to the strange man we encounter in the diner. So if this theory is correct, that means if we take the mask off, we see that it's... Wait, what? Who is that? This monster man is too much, and I couldn't stop laughing. Once the player sees him, he crouches and walks into this tall grass, where he eventually stops and continuously walks in place. I'm still having trouble accepting this guy's makeover as I take his mask off again. He looks way too excited about this whole cult stalking gig that he has going on, that's for sure. You can see how it's just the front of his face that's visible, making for a strange looking dude. So I made my way over to the guy to see if I could mess with him. Obviously, the mace has no effect on him, but he seems too happy to care anyways. This is all I came across during my exploration of this area though, so let's go ahead and progress with the story and enter the next scene. After putting the fire out, we make our way back to the tower to report to Connor about the campsite. He then mentions that people have been flocking to the area because of the disappearance of 3 kids, with there being rumors of entities haunting the area. After telling him we don't believe that, he's thankful and says he'll contact the authorities so we can take care of it first thing in the morning. I personally feel there should be more urgency here, but okay, Connor. All this commotion has made us hungry though, so we whip up some lasagna and throw it in the oven. While we wait and think about the lasagna we ate in the first Fears to Fathom chapter, we can do our report for the night. Once done, we can now smash this dish. We then awkwardly eat it on our bed as we sit in paranoia, but nothing occurs during this meal. Soon after this, we fall asleep. However, our character gets woken up and we can see that we're not exactly alone. Getting up, we'll quickly realize our cultist friend is right outside the window, as he proceeds to walk around the outside of the tower. I could hear him coming to the door, and I don't know why, but I thought he may have left, so I opened the door. Yeah, he didn't go anywhere, and this bear spray does nothing. After reloading, I decided to wait before I opened the door, which ends up being the way to go about it. We'll find that he left us a little present though, which is, needless to say, terrifying. Informing Connor of everything that took place is unsurprisingly useless, as he downplays it, saying it's probably just kids messing with me. Once again, okay Connor, but we just turn the light off and go back to bed. Going back and looking at the sequence from another view, we can see the cultist standing in our window waiting for us to look at him. Clearly, he's still very happy to be here. We can watch him creepily crab walk around the tower as he approaches the main door. The entire sequence is funny to watch, mostly because he has been unmasked. After he leaves us this gift though, he'll continue making his way around and down the stairs of the tower. He eventually despawns near the bottom of the stairs. Outside of this gothic birthday celebration, nothing else new occurs during this whole section. Which brings me to Plague. This is a computer game our character can play, which is basically a horde mode zombie game, as we continuously fight off these undead. A game where we can get infinite headshot points if we just shoot dead zombies on the ground. I couldn't help but wonder, what if we took the zombies and even this nifty shotgun out of the computer and into the state park we're at? What could go wrong? We normally play this on a small screen, but in reality, the map and player controller is set up just like the one we're playing now. So if we load it in, well, the result is fairly glitchy, but as you can see, I now have a zombie chasing me as we make our way up the tower. I was surprised to see they were able to follow me, just because I assumed their nav mesh would only be tied to the video game environment. I go ahead and blast this one out of existence and then try to spawn more in. Now that I have this horde following me, I need to try and stay alive, because adding all of this in was kind of a pain in the butt. So I make my way up the tower, and as you can see, I can't use the door. This is because we're technically using a different quote-unquote player than our typical RV dude. But what's odd is this horde never came up the stairs like the previous zombie. In fact, they straight up disappeared, and I couldn't really make sense of it. Eventually I realized where they went though. Somehow they broke out of the map and, well, just kept on running. I could find the zombies scattered throughout the outer bounds of the map, hilariously fleeing for their undead lives. Unfortunately, with this setup, I can't proceed through the game, so I guess it's time to say bye to this shoddy and continue on with the original game. However, not before making a slippery slope of shoddy shells. I love game physics. So night 3 starts off with us having to clean our binoculars and survey the area. We'll end up seeing a flare go off, which follows with us talking to a hiker over the radio. The hiker sounds just like Connor, which confused me at first, but he sounds distressed and lost, and requires our help to get out of the woods safely. The game, Do You Copy, trained me for this moment. In a nutshell, it seems no matter what direction we give this hiker, the conversation ends with him thinking he found us, but it's definitely not us. I do believe our direction does dictate his survival though, which I'll explain in a few. We're interrupted by a knock on the door though, which follows with this odd conversation with Billy, as he gives us some tower supplies. He'll eventually leave, as we're left with eating some more food, doing our report, and going back to sleep. Wait, we need some more firewood. So we head down to grab some, and boom, jump scared, by none other than our best friend / cultist. He claims to be a worker, and is just creepy overall. Once done talking with him, he'll just casually walk into the woods, as we're supposed to pretend that was normal. I was able to keep my eyes on him as he walked through the woods, and managed to find that he eventually stops and just walks in place down this trail, being visible to the player. Anyways, we head back up, start a fire, and learn from Connor that there are no workers. After bringing up the worker, he thinks we're just yanking his chain. Despite all this suspicion, we finally go to bed. Going back through this scene, when the hiker shoots the flare into the sky, it's fairly similar to the smoke we ended up investigating earlier, as the flare also comes from the blank canvas area. As for Billy, he just appears at our door, and when he leaves, he takes a long walk down the stairs and then leaves the Tower 11 site, disappearing shortly after. As for our creepy friend who jump scares us, he only appears as soon as we grab some firewood. Also, this is the second model of the bad guy that I was messing with earlier in the video, the one I made into a giant. After he leaves and ends up in that resting spot, where we can normally track him, I break the barrier and take a closer look. I attempted to end the game early, but clearly, as you can see, this plan wasn't quite working. Progressing the story, the 2 Nights Later portion has nothing of interest when it comes to out-of-bounds activity, or anything of that nature. It involves the player updating the computer, which ends up shutting the power off. We then get the generator back on, go to the bathroom, and fade to black as we complete the scene. It is now 1 week later, as our character talks about Connor's generator undergoing maintenance, basically reminiscing about the isolation he's experiencing in the tower. However, it ends up that we have another incident occurring as we wake up to Connor over the radio in the early morning. When going to check out the smoke this time, we find a very questionable situation occurring across the water. The only thing our character could think of doing is to acquire evidence. So we pulled the camera out and... wait, was that the best idea? Not good. Where'd they go? Now we have company! Glorious! So we do the most obvious thing possible and hide under the bed. There's nowhere else to go. Eventually the cultist breaks the door in and will proceed to search the room. He'll make his way back out, and that's when we need to make a run for it. Frantically running down the stairs, I ended up hiding in the portable toilet. This ends up being the right thing to do, as our clueless cultist friend doesn't know what to do. Eventually he'll head to the shed, and we can make a pretty safe run for it at this point, loading us into the final scene. Let's go back and take a closer look at these cultists though, shall we? Remember the hiker we attempted to assist over the radio from before? Well, to my understanding, if we tell him to go right as we're directing them, this ultimately kills him. We can see his body lying on the ground by all the cultists when telling him to go right. However, if we tell him to go left, his lifeless body is not in the scene, which makes me believe that he survived? Food for thought? These cultists though, let's just say they're all happy to be here. Each and every single one of them. When taking their picture, I had to slow the game down, which resulted with them sliding rather than running. It was pretty funny to watch. You can see their line of sight is fixed on my character, which adds to this strange sequence. Taking the masks off really shows just how flexible these guys' faces are. The one in white will go in the tent and remain there indefinitely, but the rest of the gang, they hilariously run to this spot where they all group up and essentially create this weird mosh pit. It's pretty funny to watch as their heads flip all about, struggling to keep their line of sight on the player. We can see the main cultist that comes after us has his flashlight implanted in his arm, which makes sense seeing as we'd normally never be able to clearly see how he's holding it. Watching him come into the tower isn't much different, but as long as my dude is having a grand time being a psycho, it's all good. He'll eventually wrap around the tower and then wait for us to make our escape. At this point, I decided to go check in on our other friends, and, well, yeah. They're still, doing their thing. I decided to use my Nightcrawler powers and teleport over to this area. I then joined the mosh pit they had going on. As you can see, it felt about as awkward as it looked. What a time to be alive. However, it's now time to make our escape before things escalate any further here. Stay back, evildoers. Moving into the final scene, we need to keep running, as the cultist does end up appearing as he continues to pursue us. Once in the RV, the screen fades to black as the credits roll soon after. The one thing I found curious about this end sequence is that if we just stand here and don't progress, the cultist never shows up. It's only after we get so far that he'll appear and begin to chase us. And when he does begin chasing us with a knife out, we can straight up get him to run through objects. He has no chill at all. But here's the kicker. During this whole ordeal, I found something that you any % speedrunners might be interested in. Because you don't even have to do this scene at all. The developer put a skip to the credits command in this final scene, so as soon as you load this map during this final instance, all you have to do is hit the L key on your keyboard and the game will be completed. I'm assuming they forgot to remove this before building out the game. The credits scene is also pretty standard, and there's not a lot going on behind the scenes. But with that, we've come to the end of our journey in Fears of Fathom Ironbark Lookout. Next up we have Fears of Fathom Episode 5, Woodbury Getaway. In the 5th episode of Fears of Fathom, our character, Sydney Harper, works at a consulting firm and plans on taking a weekend getaway with some college friends. However, little does she know, these plans will end up going horribly wrong as Sydney and her friends make this trip to Woodbury. As always, I usually hit you guys with a brief recap, so everyone knows the sequence of events that take place throughout the game. With that said, we start off in this cubicle playing as Sydney Harper. She needs a coffee to get done with the day, as she states. We can see we're in the city, and it's late, but if we come over to this area, we can make ourselves a coffee to progress. Once she's done with the coffee, naturally, she has to use the restroom now. On our way to the bathroom, we can find one of Sydney's co-workers who is trying to get work done. Outside of casual conversation, nothing really happens here. Heading to the restroom, once we finish our business there, we'll be able to hear footsteps and humming. We can hear an individual enter the bathroom as they continue to hum. Exiting the restroom stall results with a janitor jump scaring us, as he states he didn't know we were in here. Curious how he didn't hear my pee meter go down, but okay. He'll express his frustration as someone keeps throwing coffee cups on the floor of the office. Oops, he just goes back to cleaning as we're then tasked with booking a cabin. Sydney's phone will start ringing as we make our way back to her cubicle, which ends up being her odd friend Mike. You'll see what I mean as we get further into this video, but he'll let us know that he thought we might be ignoring him, as he awkwardly laughs. Expressing that he's only kidding, the call is to make sure that we book this trip that we plan on taking. We're on a budget, due to her other friend Nora. So, as we browse the potential homes to rent, we'll see that our options are narrowed down to this private cabin in Woodbury. Booking the cabin will follow with the screen fading to black as Sydney begins to tell her story. She explains that she works at a consulting firm, which leaves her little time for herself. Her college friend Mike is the one that suggested this weekend getaway, and the plan was simple: rent a cabin for the weekend and be back on Monday. 2 days pass as we load into an elevator with this very suspicious happy dude. Mike will text as he's pulling into the parking garage to pick us up. After making sure that the overly happy dude leaves, we greet Mike with this awkward hug. He'll say, "That's still how you hug people?" as we're forced to hug him once again. You smell like a potential killer. Anyway, we throw our bag in the bed of the truck and hop in as we're loaded into the next scene. Okay, end of review. It's now time to go back and take a closer look at everything we just went through. The first thing I wanted to do was get my character down onto those city streets. This results with us falling through the map though, which the game will even recognize, as our character comically says, "I fell off the map." I wonder if this is a comical nod to us falling off our bike in Fears of Fathom 3 as we plummeted from the sky. So the next best thing would be exploring the city with our camera instead. The pedestrians that are walking down here consist of 2 different models, one being the smiling guy, who we end up seeing in the elevator, along with a model of a woman as well. At some point I broke some of them as they began to just slide around, making these streets feel like a fever dream or something. We can see the building we're in is in fact just a floating 1-story section we traverse through. This makes sense as we'd obviously never see this exterior of this building during normal gameplay. I couldn't resist and started messing with the scale of some of these folks. Doing this appears to affect the path they are on, as they'll be deterred from the normal path they take. I went a little crazy and made some of them big boys and girls, which, as you can see, resulted in this weird traffic jam of bodies. Watching this semi-truck drive through the city and making its turns is pretty silly to see. But as I dug into the files, I found that the city could have looked a bit different from what it currently is. We can see some much larger buildings when we load them in, and they are massive in comparison. Speaking of, I ended up blowing this coffee up, resulting with this giant cup of coffee that I tried to drag around the office. This did not last long though, as I had trouble moving while holding it. Our co-worker doesn't seem to be bothered by any of the strange events taking place, so we let him carry on with his work. Moving on, I decided to take a page from the janitor's book and go into the men's restroom. This results with us, falling off the map. Anyway, this janitor will spawn right outside the restroom as he creeps right in, only to disappear. We can see during the jump scare that he appears as he jumps out from behind the door. What reasonable person does this? Jeremy needs to work on his social skills, I guess. So I get back at him by throwing my cup at him. He'll tell us we need to stop, and we'll be upset if we continue to do it, but that smile never leaves his face. Not much else takes place during this entire sequence in the office, but there's a computer game we play called Type Invader Reloaded. We basically are tasked with typing out the words that these aliens are tagged with, which ultimately destroys them. Movement is all automated like a rail shooter, and all we need to do is type words. It's overall fun, and if we go out of bounds while playing, we can see that this area they used for this game is up above the map we are on. This won't be the last we see of these Roswell intruders though, as Woodbury is known for its UFO sightings. It is kind of neat looking at how low resolution the models are though for this game. Going into this next scene, you'll see that this parking garage unsurprisingly consists of this small map. We can see things are already broken though, as this guy starts sliding away. Intrigued, I decide to follow him to see what his journey holds. Looking at his car, we can see it appears it's filled in, which was strange looking. Following his car, I thought he simply disappeared, but before doing so, he makes this wild fast turn around the bend. Watching from this angle, we can see he makes the turn, hits the wall, and then disappears. Mike will load in on this ramp though, as he comes to pick us up wearing his Crystal Lake scented cologne. I'm sorry, but this guy is strange, and I'm already getting killer vibes from him. I tried having our conversation from a distance to avoid the hug, but as you can see, he pulls me in anyway. With that though, I put on my speedster shoes as we get ready to embark on this trip to Woodbury. Progressing normally at this point, it's going to be 4:26 p.m. as we load in while Mike drives. Mike will engage in small talk about college, and overall, you can get the vibe that he's definitely into Sydney much more so than she is with him. It gives you a slight sense that we may not be completely safe with him. Rick Wilson will message us in regards to the house we're renting, requesting a confirmation text to make sure everything is good. During our drive, Sydney will focus on a school bus that's parked beside a house. She sort of makes a big deal over it, as Mike shrugs it off as it could be someone's project or something. Shortly after this, a deer will be in the road as Mike honks at it, making it flee into the woods. This follows with Mike talking about Native American lore, saying the deer crossing our path is a message from the universe. Unsurprisingly, Sydney has no response for this. After confirming with Rick that we're on our way, Mike lets us know the drive should be another hour and a half or so. This follows with the screen fading to black as we enter the next sequence of the game. Coming back to the beginning of this section though, we can zoom out and get a good look at the entirety of this map. I briefly made it so all the objects are loaded in despite the distance, and as you can see, the game began to lag extremely. So let's go ahead and turn that back off. Taking a look at the truck, we can see this snow surface linked to the top of the truck. This actually acts as an anti-snow plane to prevent the snowfall from entering the truck as we drive. So basically, the snow particles think they're hitting the ground and just stop. I decided to freeze time in the game and survey this entire map with the camera to see if there is perhaps something we missed or something hidden out here. Every house I entered was unsurprisingly mostly vacant, with some having vegetation within them, trees, grass, etc. Moving on, I made it to the school bus and was excited to see if there was more to this bus. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case, as I didn't see anything out of the ordinary. However, we can find the deer in the road here frozen in time. He'd just be chillin'. So this road does loop around the entire map, and as we drove, I must have done something the game didn't like, because it ended up freezing us in this position as Mike was unable to proceed with driving. Loading back in, we can see the deer wasn't having it with our shenanigans, as it casually slides off screen. I tried derailing Mike's path as he travels, and as you can see, even with lifting the truck high off the ground, it has no effect, as it simply just resets. I then tried making the truck huge, like the pedestrians from before, but we carry on as normal. Well, normal-ish? However, turning the truck into an RC toy is probably my favorite out of all the things I tried here. It appears to be going much faster than it actually is. It's hilarious to watch take place, as we beam down the road like we're the children from Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. When approaching the deer at this size, you see that the deer doesn't even flinch as we drive by it. I'm guessing due to our size, we must have bypassed the trigger for the deer to run off, which results with us continuing to drive, as Mike won't say one word to us. My anxiety started to kick in as I realized we were beginning to sink into the map. We eventually do slightly sink under the road, but I believe in Mike, and don't believe he'll let us die that way. Being small ultimately lets us loop around this entire map. After making ourselves regular size again, things sort of go back to normal, as we're able to proceed into the next section. Entering the next scene during typical gameplay, Mike will grab our attention as he points out a pizza joint called Moe's Pizza. So it's now time to smash some pizza. Mike will hold the door for us like a gentleman, and as we can see, this place is hopping. I won't go into great detail, but watching the TV shows is a must. They are all strange and will definitely give some laughs. However, there's one commercial that's more interesting than funny. Watch and listen carefully.
Enjoy amazing views and undisturbed relaxation in our refurbished cabins. Now, not only are these cabins cheap, but they're also safe, with each cabin having a designated caretaker to ensure that your stay is top-notch.
Oh, really? We'll come back to this. There's also a commercial that shows the Fears to Fathom main menu on the monitor, which was a cool Easter egg. Anyway, everyone in here initially seems nice, outside of this lady wanting us to leave her alone. I mean, it makes sense, they don't know me. You do get an achievement for talking to all the NPCs in here though. At this point, we're going to want to order some pizza in order to progress. While waiting for our food to be ready, our other friend, Nora, lets us know that she's going to be running behind, as she's supposed to be meeting up with us in Woodbury. Mike will proceed to be creepy with his remarks, as we're supposed to know what he's talking about. Once we get our food and start eating, this guy will approach us and basically ask us for a ride. It gets weird as we let him know there's no room. He doesn't like this answer and begins to be passive-aggressive. He plays it off, stating he's just cold and tired, which follows with his exit from the pizzeria. Once we're done eating, it's time to hit the road, but it looks like we'll be driving this time around. As soon as we enter the truck, the screen will fade to black, ending this scene. Coming back to this area, if we go up, we can take a look at the entire map this section takes place in. You can see the majority of it consists of trees. Going back to Sydney, I immediately test to see where we're able to go, and it appears we're trapped in here by invisible walls. Something else to note, cars will not kill you if you run out in front of them. Once breaking out these barriers, I proceed to do what I've always been doing, as I explore more of these houses that are once again unsurprisingly vacant. It was worth a look though. I did this with all the surrounding buildings, but didn't find anything. Knowing what lies ahead for our character, I tried flagging down this cop, and they weren't having it. I forgot to mention, this guy folding boxes has an interesting recommendation when it comes to the choice of toppings for our pizza. As he states, get the cheese, just the cheese. Alright. This prompted me to go in the back to see what kind of pizza shop they're running here, and by taking a look, there's just a guy standing here patiently waiting for boxes. He'll grab the boxes that the cheese guy was folding and bring them back here, where they simply vanish as he resets. I mean, he seems content with the job. No one cares that I'm back here either. This is when I began messing with all the NPCs in here, as I discovered that this small guy's name in the files is Hobo. Trying to move this guy outside the building was futile, as this guy just casually walks through the wall and right back into the building. What is this sorcery? Remembering that this lady was snippy with me, I decided to boot her out too. So I slid her outside, across the street, and eventually up on this gas station. There we go. Talking to her guy again shows that she has super hearing, as she's able to confront us from the roof of the gas station. Big words for big lady. I continue to terrorize the customers of this restaurant, seeing as not much takes place off screen in this section. However, when looking at this particular guy, I couldn't help but notice he sort of looked like Mike. This is when I saw in the files that his name is Mike, with our Mike being referred to as New Mike. This raises quite a few questions as to who this Mike is that we're traveling with. Perhaps this used to be the old model for Mike? All these people must be getting sick of me though, so I decided to move on. In another instance, our hitchhiker friend approaches us in a much scarier demeanor, as he's sliding about like a zombie. Following him, we can see he'll proceed down the road, eventually coming to a stop right here, where he'll stay for the remainder of this sequence. With that, we give the pizza joint one last farewell, as the customers probably won't ever want to see us again. Sorry, not sorry. Loading into the next section, we'll see it's now 5:49 p.m. as we're in control of the truck. Before progressing normally though, let's quickly go over the secret ending that takes place where we're currently at. If we instead decide to turn this truck around and head back from where we came, Sydney will say, we aren't going to Woodbury anymore, followed by, we decide to go back. This in turn simply takes us back to the main menu. I guess that's one way to handle it. Pressing on normally though, this part basically consists of us, the player, driving the truck into Woodbury. No interactions occur unless we drive recklessly, but once arriving at this lovely home, we gather our things and head to the front door. We'll use the code Rick texted us to get the house key, so we can make our way in. Once inside, Mike lets us know that he needs to use the bathroom, and says we should put the groceries away while he's in there. So we do just that, and unload everything from this cooler. Mike will then come out after we complete this task, expressing how the pizza did a number on him. Now Sydney needs to use the restroom though, so we go ahead and do that. At this point, Mike and Sydney decide to do a tour of the house as we make our way upstairs. This first room on the left gives us a good old jump scare with this small, strange man. He excitedly welcomes us to his home sweet home, which is something we'll want to keep in mind for later. Apparently, this is Rick. He'll end up giving us an entire tour of the home, which does prove to be helpful throughout the game. His familiarity with the home comes off as normal as he gives this tour. He'll even notice that we stocked the fridge, which is also something else to note. Getting to the basement is where it gets more strange though. When Mike asks about this locked room in the basement, Rick expresses that it's nothing to be concerned with, as renters don't need the space and ought to keep upstairs. Then as we're trying to exit the basement, he goes on further to say that someone had died here in the past, and that reports of voices and shuffling around could be heard in the basement. Apparently, this ends up being a joke, but only Rick is laughing. He then claims he needs to head off and go find his cat. Before leaving, he'll ask Sydney what her name is, stating he must be getting old as the reason for forgetting. A lot of red flags happening right now. Sydney decides to take a shower at this point, and once we're done with that, we'll come back down and find Mike is ready to go fishing. So we reluctantly go out to the shed, grab a fishing rod, bait, and then set up next to this ravine where Mike and the player fish for some carp. We need to catch 3 carp to progress from this part, as we're tasked with keeping this fish icon in the orange as we reel it in. Once we're done, we will head back inside. Coming back to the start of this sequence, we can once again zoom out and get a good look at this final map that we'll be playing on. There are a lot of town sections and terrain to explore overall, and to save on time, I can just tell you right now that I combed through this entire map to see what we could find, and it's pretty much the same findings as the previous map. Empty homes, etc. There's some pretty silly billboards too, which were pretty funny to view, but overall, it's a cold, quiet ghost town. Maybe the killer has taken over Woodbury. There was this house across the street though, and inside there's quite a funny wall. It looks like it's made of doors. So the mesh for this wall object has been assigned the overarching material that is used for doors. But because there isn't any proper texture mapping with this object for this material, what we're left with is a funhouse wall full of small doors. Making things interesting though, I managed to get the aliens from the computer to invade the town of Woodbury. Unfortunately, because the alien minigame isn't free roam, there weren't a lot of things I could do with it, but I could do this. Imagine just driving up and seeing this blocking the road. So of course, like any good driver, I smashed it with my ride as I pushed it into the guardrail. I think it'll live, but will we? With the alien's magical powers, our car was then dropped hundreds of meters in the air as we struck the ground for a rocky landing. At this point, I decided to go off-roading with Mike as we drove to our inevitable end, as in the edge of the map. Just like in previous episodes, we're able to yeet ourselves into the great beyond, and I'm surprised Mike doesn't have anything to say about it. Before actually entering the town, I wanted to let my presence be known, so I started messing with his bobblehead on our dash. After blowing him up in size, we could see his name is Sheriff McBullet, which is great. So after some adjusting, I managed to get this sheriff on top of the truck as we cruised into town, letting everyone know that we're from Texas. This killer doesn't even know what's coming their way. While doing this, I managed to find another ornament that possibly could have been an earlier choice that the developer decided not to go with, hence Sheriff McBullet's existence. I guess there was only room for one sheriff in this town. In the midst of this, I was trying to flip the truck, like we have with other vehicles in past Fears to Fathom episodes. But it proved to be difficult. Once I finally did it, I was sad to see that it wasn't operable while flipped. Technology has regressed. However, we graciously arrive at the house in style, if I must say so for myself. Glorious! If the player looks up at the second floor window, they'll actually be able to see Rick peering through it. As we're entering the house, you can see he's tracking us, as we're always in his sight. Very, unsettling. It's time to break the sequence of events here though, as we go upstairs first, instead of stocking the fridge. Mike's still in the bathroom at this point, but as you can see, we're able to initiate this interaction with Rick anyways, as he runs at us from the window. Mike's now with us due to this interaction, but he's technically still using the bathroom. As Rick gives his tour, we can see that the bathroom is, in fact, still occupied by Mike, but not really. Looking in there shows that he's not there, of course, but in the kitchen, Rick will praise our stocked fridge that's actually empty, which I thought was funny. It got more creepy when they began to freeze in place and start sliding about. At any rate, I figured I should stock the fridge now since I didn't before. However, I foregore that once we finish stocking the fridge, that the trigger for Mike to come out of the bathroom takes place. This resulted with me having temporary paralysis, as Mike unsuspectedly and terrifyingly approached me. This in turn prompts him to go upstairs and unpack. Watching him go up, we'll see the bag disappear as he assumes this position. This sequence could vary, seeing as we're currently getting a tour by Rick. As soon as I continue to follow Rick into the basement, Mike will realize he's not where he's supposed to be, as he begins sliding to our location. Can we go home yet? This entire sequence plays out hilariously though, as they continue to be in these broken positions. Following Rick as he leaves is quite the venture. He'll make his way to the side of the house as he proceeds down this path. It's a rather long path that goes all the way back and behind the house, leading to this little bridge for the ravine. He'll cross this bridge and end up clipping through a couple of objects before ultimately disappearing. Meanwhile, I'm watching Mike as he just stands in front of the couch staring at the TV. Possessed much? Is it fair to say Rick and Mike are on the same level of creep? It's once again time to fish though. I forgot to mention before, but you can also catch goldfish as well, even while standing in the water. However, there is something I missed from my first playthrough, which is this person walking on the bridge as we're fishing. Going in for a closer look, we'll see that it's our good old passive-aggressive hitchhiker. He'll eventually make his way back here, where he'll end up walking in place for quite some time. Coming back here as Sydney, we unfortunately can't interact with him, but I did find out something else about this spot. Apparently, I can fish here, and as you can see, we're catching fish right from the feet of this hiker, making for a strange scenario. So after fishing, we end up coming back inside, where we have this whole cooking sequence as we make a meal together. For any players with a keen eye, you'll notice that the fridge door was open when coming back in, and that one of the milks is missing too. Something to keep in mind for later. Getting this food in the oven though, will follow with Mike wanting to play a board game while we wait. The Ouija board is the correct choice here when choosing one of the board games, which will lead us to setting up the game in the basement. I personally want to play Catopoly, but whatever. So as you'd assume, we try to speak with the spirits in the basement, which ultimately ends with Mike freaking out and running upstairs, as we could hear shuffling from the locked room. Mike can be found upstairs out of breath, and Sydney lets him know that was a jerk move to leave her down there. The food is done now though, so at this point we get settled, eat, and watch some TV. After this, Mike goes up to check emails on his laptop while we grab the dishes and wash them. That's when Mike will text us, claiming someone is under his bed. Going upstairs to investigate, Mike decides to jump scare us, as he was pranking us. Good one, Mike. Now Mike wants to play hide and seek, so we hide in the basement, where he eventually does find us. Mike will then decide to hide this time, which leads us to finding him in the closet upstairs. Once finding him, we end up thinking he's pulling a fast one again, as he claims he can hear something in the attic. However, after grabbing this step stool and using it to get up into the attic, we'll see that all that's up here is this sweet cat, which must be the one Rick was talking about earlier. We let Mike know it was just a cat, as we continue playing hide and seek. This follows with a player hiding out in the shed in the backyard. As we watch Mike come out looking for us, we'll see a figure walk by within the house during this, which is certainly unsettling. Mike's having too much fun to notice though, as he finds us in the shed. At this point, he goes to hide once again, and he's nowhere to be found while looking for him. Turns out we find someone else instead. It's Rick, and he's fixing the sink with a hammer apparently. A tense conversation will take place between the three of them, weighing the reasoning for his presence in the home. He ends up being offended, like he's not being a creep or anything, and proceeds to leave, with the screen eventually fading to black as the scene ultimately ends. Rewinding time now to cause further chaos, I want to check out this locked room in the basement. Deleting the door, we can come in here and see that there's nothing in here. This is probably because we never actually see the inside of this room, at least during this particular sequence. Even when Mike freaks out during the board game, we can see nothing is actually there. However, if you look closely, we can see this box that's clearly for the kitty, and oh, it's our milk that went missing. Clearly someone's feeding this cat, but I think it's safe to say that most of us are on the same page when it comes to who we think it is. I was getting sick of Mike's crap, so I canceled dinner and booted him right out of the house. Of course, this doesn't work, and he comes right back in to have dinner. And meanwhile, if anyone was wondering, the hitchhiker is still walking in place out here. This is when Mike tries to prank us, as he claims someone's under the bed. As we reach the second floor, he'll despawn. He'll then strangely spawn behind us as we walk in, initiating his jump scare. I played hide and seek again with him, but this time he kept his eyes covered the entire time. Clearly he was cheating in some way, as he was still able to find me each time. Joking aside, remember the figure we saw in the house? Well, if we wait, we'll see. Stand by. Let Mike get outside. There we go. Anyway, we'll see this dark, shadowy figure spawn in and walk through the room for only a brief moment before disappearing. Freezing time, we can see that it's none other than Rick. His model is very dark, and in the midst of looking at the files, I ended up activating the Rick that we initially make contact with. I was excited to see what would happen if we just played normally at this point. So Mike goes to hide for the final time as he walks by Rick upstairs. Once Sydney is done counting, we can see the Rick fixing the sink will spawn in. So I make my way upstairs and, let's close that for now. Oh yeah, I made the kitty bigger and freed them from the attic. Back on track though, I noticed Mike's nowhere to be found for his final hide, as I would have liked to have seen where he was actually hiding. So from a different perspective, I open the bathroom door to see where he comes from. He comes running up behind us in the most bizarre manner. Slowing it down, we can see his ankles are broken as he makes this valiant sprint to come save us. It's quite terrifying actually. Imagine just 1 minute you're fine, and the next, your feet were put on backwards. At this point, I was really hoping that I could get multiple interactions with Rick at the same time here, but unfortunately, this Rick cannot be interacted with. Pushing on normally, we'll see that Mike and Sydney agree that something's off about Rick, as they attribute it to a lack of social awareness. It's 11:39 p.m. as we're awoken to a knock on the door. It ends up being Mike, as he wants to talk to us about something. Overall, the conversation involves Mike being weird and making strange statements. These two clearly have a history, as you'll hear in this dialogue, as his whole demeanor gives off creeper vibes. Nora will end up messaging us though, stating that her tire blew out, and she needs assistance. Mike decides he's gonna go help her though, telling Sydney that she should stay here and get some sleep, as she's still in her pajamas. He'll make sure he gets one last hug in, of course, before driving off into the blizzard. We're left with not much to do at this point, other than go back up to bed, which leads us into the final sequence of the game. Coming back to the beginning of this part, we can see Mike is standing outside our door, appearing like a character we still need to unlock in a fighting game, being completely covered in shadow. The hitchhiker is no longer lingering behind this barn either. Checking out the locked room in the basement reveals that it's no longer an empty room. We can confidently say that someone is living here. Let's get out of this bedroom though, and unlock Mike. There we are. So I let Mike have this awkward conversation with us again, so we can see where he actually ends up when he leaves. Are you going on an adventure, Mr. Baggins? Let's give him a little hug before he makes his leave. Glorious. Off he goes. Of course, his size alters his position in the truck, as we can see him under it. This does not stop him from taking off though, as he goes to save our friend Nora. At one point I thought he was going to flip the truck, as it began to lean on two wheels. It does eventually end up in this fixed position in the middle of the road though, where both Mike and the truck will remain for the rest of this instance. I, of course, come out to see if I can help my dear friend, but it's looking pretty grim. However, I do pull him out of the truck, and in the end, get him back to the house so he can get warm. He struggled a bit, as he believed he was still driving, so I had him sit down at this table. Sorta. We were already in there, but if you listen in the basement, you can hear snoring in the forbidden room, making it clear that someone's in there. Of course, coming in here with Sydney does nothing, but we can still hear the snoring. Take a listen. Mike doesn't seem to be concerned with it, so let's go back to bed. It's now 12:39 a.m., and we're waking up to the doorbell. Progressing normally, we'll check to see who's at the door. We'll clearly be able to see that it's our hitchhiker friend, and this can only be bad news. He claims to be in a bad spot, saying he was counting on a ride from some friends, but they're running behind. He ends up getting real upset because we don't let him in. In summary, telling us that karma's well, you know. At this point, we need to go back to bed again, because that apparently seems to be the safe thing to do. After waking up once again, we'll hear a banging sound and then a scream that follows shortly after. This prompts Sydney to text Rick to come back over, as she's scared and believes the hitchhiker is lingering outside. Rick will then show up, with his hammer as well though. We'll explain the situation to him, but the conversation grows dire as he turns up his creep level, stating the obvious fact that we're alone. He'll go over to warm up by the fire as he rambles about storms bringing out all kinds of folks, and that not all of them know when to stay away. That's when the reveal takes place, as Real Rick texts us, wondering what the heck we're talking about, as he apparently lives in Burlington and hasn't been to the house in weeks. Imposter Rick will then come up to us, asking who we're talking to, stating that it's pretty late to be texting. Once we confront him, he gets really upset, saying we're trespassing, and if anyone is leaving, it will only be one of us? At least, I think that's what he meant. He'll then dash to the front door and start hammering it shut. I guess you could say him getting us at this point is considered a bad ending. However, what we need to do here is run to the basement and hide. Once doing so, he'll come downstairs as he searches throughout most of the basement. We'll then see him enter the forbidden room, which prompts this chase to begin. We have to make our way upstairs, all the way to the second floor, where we eventually find ourselves hiding in this closet. It's almost like we've been preparing for this. Once he leaves the room, we need to grab the step stool and make our way up into the attic, before another text message alerts him to our location. We'll hear Mike yelling "let us in," as imposter Rick lingers below, eventually leaving out of our sight. Real Rick will then text us, indicating that he's contacted the police, which should be the cue that it's safe to come down. Gentle music will begin to play as we make our way through the house, as our movement is slowed down at this part. When coming down, we can see the back door is open, as Mike busts through the front door with Nora by his side. Of course, Mike was glitched for me during this instance, as his model was frozen for some reason. However, the screen will fade to black as we get an explanation from Sydney on how everything played out. In summary, they get a full refund, but suspect that Real Rick knew Imposter Rick. I'd say this tracks, because there's actually a commercial that gives an explanation to this, so take a listen.
With each cabin having a designated caretaker to ensure that your stay is top-notch.
Definitely food for thought. The game then concludes though, as the credits begin to roll. Let's go back to when this hitchhiker wakes us up though. As we're waking up, we'll see that he's at the door knocking away. There's still no sign of anyone in the basement, but once this uncomfortable interaction with the hitchhiker ends, we can see he'll end up walking over to the exterior doors leading into the basement. He'll kick this door until we go back to sleep. But if you check out the bottom left corner of the door here, we can see it says Home Sweet Home, with a drawing of a house next to it. Remember what Imposter Rick said when he first met us? Welcome to my home sweet home. Glorious. Sleeping and waking back up though, we'll see that he's still kicking the door outside, while we're normally hearing the scream outside. The cellar doors will open at this point as the hitchhiker slides away, while doing his kicking motion. He'll disappear shortly after this though. Imposter Rick is nowhere to be found, but does end up loading in right next to the garage, as he takes his sweet time walking around the house and to the front door. We're on to your scheme, old man! So I channeled my inner Sonic the Hedgehog, and as soon as he began to run for the door, I zoomed down the stairs and instead tried to hide in his little home sweet home. This makes for a hilarious scene, as he enters the room and hides from us. We have this odd stare-off, but it doesn't last long, as the text message alerts him, ultimately leading to my demise. Getting outside during this chase is pretty great as well, seeing as he will continue to pursue us. I ran all the way out of Woodbury basically, but he clearly hadn't lost my scent. Man, this bro is slow. Seriously, even at normal speed, we can easily get away from him out here. We can get him caught up on certain buildings, as he's unable to clip through them like we are, but I digress. I made my way back to the house to continue the sequence of events. As soon as we close this door upstairs, during the normal chase, he'll load in right behind it. However, I ended up trying to speed by him to get to our friends this time, and managed to have some dialogue with our friends before getting destroyed. My guess here is that this must be from a scrapped ending, as normally the screen fades to black when reaching these two. My favorite part about all of this is the two of them saying we don't look so good as Imposter Rick takes us out. Geez! If we let this full dialogue play out and don't die, we'll see these following lines of text and then the game will lock up. Because this was cut, again, guessing here, the game never restores movement to the player, so it creates a soft lock. Rewinding time a bit, these two, along with the truck, will load in as we're hiding upstairs. In another instance, I thought if I brought them inside this time that things would turn out differently. This ends up not being the case, as they just stand there earning their World's Worst Friends medals. Meanwhile, Imposter Rick continues to chase us. If we play the game the way it's supposed to be played, when Imposter Rick flees, we can see he'll run downstairs and out the back door, vanishing on the back porch. It's okay though. Mike, whose last name is now written as Rizzler in the game files, I kid you not, it's literally written there by the devs. This Mike is here to save the day. The credits will play out as the camera will pan across the house as we see the police have shown up. Getting a closer look, we can see the one staring down into the basement, who doesn't appear to have a firearm. Did they just send an auxiliary officer to this call? We can see another officer is talking to Mike on the porch, and the other one does awkwardly end up joining them. But with that, we've come to the end of our journey in Fears of Fathom Woodbury Getaway, concluding the Fears of Fathom series. I do hope you enjoyed the broken adventures we had throughout these episodes, and I'll catch you all in the next video really soon. Cheers!